So I'd like to welcome today two women who are stalwarts in the industry, who have blazed the trail and changed the direction of capital markets in South Africa. Anne McCurtain, who was our first female stockbroker in South Africa, and Ines Torino, who was the second female stockbroker in our markets. And you've had a really interesting journey, and we've had many cups of coffee talking about your journey and what you've done over the years. You joined the business during a very exciting boom period in 1968, and then that was followed immediately by a massive crash. So you were really introduced through the baptism of fire. And I know that you tragically lost your dad in a very unexpected and untimely event in 1974. And from there, you started studying to become a stockbroker, and then finally achieved the unachievable a couple of years later. So tell us a little bit about the story of Anne. Tell us about your history and your background.
Thanks. My background is quite interesting. My father, like I said, was a stockbroker. So was my grandfather. I was an only child, and I just matriculated at Rodin, and I said, right, I'm 16 years old, and I want to have a gap year, and I want to play golf. It was a 5-handicap estate. And my father said, wonderful, off you go. And then the booms really started, and he was a one-man show with a secretary, and she fell pregnant. So the golf got cut immediately. You're going to come into this business, you're going to help. And so I was thrown into a boom where we worked from 7 o'clock in the morning to 12 o'clock at night. Everything was manual. We typed broker's notes. We did the trial balance every day. It was an incredibly exciting time. And then 69, we had a crash. And then it was chasing clowns for money. And it was such a contrast. It really was a contrast. Anyway, I then proceeded working for him. I got married. My husband at the time also worked in the business. And when I fell pregnant, I went to my father and said, Dad, I can't work for you any further. I'm pregnant. He was excited. My mother was furious. So I was working until I was 7 months pregnant, but within that period, my father fell downstairs and literally died 3 days later. Well, that event changed my life completely. I then was drawn into committees. The auditors were brought in, the lawyers for the stock exchange were brought in, because the big problem there was that we needed to keep our business open. And George had done all the exams, and my father then said, right, here we're signing him in as a full broking member at the end of August. So that was something that never will be repeated in the JSE history. We kept the doors open. I then had my son, and the problem was, being only 3 people in the firm, I had to bring my son into the office in his little baby cot thing, and I then did the back office with another girl, and George was on the floor. So it was a very stressful period. But I then decided, well, the business is really mine. I must go to the JSE committee and I must ask whether they would allow me in, because they had a woman who passed the exams 20 years prior. She was a lawyer, and she was told no woman is ever going to come into the JSE. And this is a men only environment. So I went in, and I think I must have been a bit cheeky. There were 12 men, and I said, I want to know if you will allow me in as the first woman member if I pass all of the exams. And Richard Lurie looked at me with disdain, and he said, what? He said, we know your father, and we know that you know a lot about the market and how the stock exchange works, but you have to be good enough to pass. If you are good enough to pass, you pass all your exams, then you'll go for an oral exam. And if you pass that, then we would admit you. And I had a baby. I found it very sort of nerve-wracking. Anyway, I passed, and the next exciting moment was to walk onto that floor with all the men in the hollow street, sort of floor area. John Bishop took me in, and everybody whistling and shouting and clapping and whatever. And it was a momentous moment in my life, which I will never forget. However, my mother was not terribly happy about the whole thing. She stayed in Sandown gardening. She was far too busy to come into town and see me walk onto the floor. Too busy. Every friend I had, every other relation I had, was up in the glass panels watching me walk on. But what did I have to deal with? At that point, I had 3 people in the office and about 100 clients. And I'm pleased to say that when we eventually sold to Momentum, there were 15,000 clients, and we controlled a huge amount of money. So my pathway, I had dominantly male clients. Okay, so that was all very nice. But it was a woman who worked with me at SP Reed, and there were 72 odd people there. Those women worked long hours, and the support they gave me, couldn't have done it.
What an amazing story, and quite an inspiration for women, even all these years later, dealing with the challenges that they have in making a mark and making a contribution. And I suppose that brings me to you, Ina, and you wouldn't believe it. Ina has actually said that I can mention her age.
Can.
Ina is, believe it or not, 80 years old, quite extraordinary, and still completely active and commercially involved in her business. Ina comes from Palermo, which is where the Capo di Capis originate from, and has a really interesting story to tell. So, Ina, you started at BP Bernstein and eventually ended up as the owner, and yet you retained the name of that business.
Yeah, there's a reason.
And you have contributed materially to the role of women in the financial markets. Can you tell us your story?
In 1944, at the age of 12, I immigrated to South Africa with my family in search of a better life. I didn't know a word of English, but I attended school, the 10th Street Convent, where the nuns used to take me in the afternoon and teach me with some form of verbal signs in instructions. Eventually, I matriculated with university entrance for a BCom degree. But then at my mother's insistence, I left university to get married. And I remember my husband's famous words, "I don't eat numbers." No, he did. He said that to me, "I don't eat numbers." So, but I loved numbers, and I had such a keen interest in finance that I decided to pursue a career in stockbroking. I made a name for myself in those days in the industry, and I became known for my investment skills. I remember some of my clients, look, that's long ago, called me the wizard. Okay.
Wow.
I have 2 children, Francesco and Lara, which along with my 4 grandchildren whom I proud and enjoy.
Wow.
And outside my career, I'm passionate about Tai Chi and cooking.
Really?
Yes, I've done Tai Chi for many years. I've got 2 swords.
And that must have taught you a lot about the business environment.
Yeah. And in 1966, I was employed by BP Bernstein.
Wow.
I was so shy and nervous at first.
Yeah.
But I observed and I learned from my mentor, Costa Fitides, and co-workers. And, you know, at the time, everything was done manually until the introduction of computers, which we really take for granted now. Yeah. And then with the guidance and tuition of my mentor, I studied and passed the stock exchange exams, breaking through the glass ceiling of male-dominated institution.
Yeah.
Yeah. Eventually, I became a stockbroker. And it wasn't easy. I had to face many challenges. because of that. Then Bernstein, the proprietor, passed away, and I acquired the firm from the estate. And I must say today, I'm very proud to have my son working with me and supported by a dedicated and loyal team, which some of them have been in the firm since the 1970s.
Yeah.
So although I faced many challenges,
Yeah.
It's been an interesting, amazing journey.
Yeah.
Okay, from a determined immigrant to a real successful stockbroker. That's what I can say.
What an inspiration. And I have to say that all of the experiences and the lessons that you are teaching the generations that have gone after you are relevant even today. We still have so much further to go. And if I just reflect on your stories and think about my story, I only entered the world of work 25 years after you
Sure.
had blazed the trail. I was in a very different era, although I did join work before the internet was created. And I too had to work my way through university. My parents couldn't afford to pay for my tuition, so I was holding 3 jobs to try and get myself through. And then I took this very unorthodox decision to stay at home with my children for nearly 5 years. And I did some more studies. And then when I went back into the work environment, all my peers were promoted and much more senior, and I started with people much younger than me. And I thought, well, the world's left me behind, and where am I to go? And I grew up in banking. I was in Standard Bank for many years in the investment bank, doing credit analytics and other capital-related areas. I had a global role, and then I took over credit card, and then after that came back to the JSE, and I had worked under both Russell and the first female CEO of the JSE, Nikki Newton-King, and took the decision to go and work in Australia for a few years, and my kids are still there. And then I came back to take on this role, and we're in such a different era now. And it's been a great privilege, but yet all of the lessons that I've learned from both of you are still relevant today. Both of you, as we go through our careers, we experience and observe different things at different points in our careers. And so, Anne, what stands out to you in what you've experienced, and what have you observed over the years? Have things changed? What were the experiences that really stand out for you, besides that monumental moment of walking onto the floor?
It's an interesting question, because once you are in our game, you are looking after other people's money, and you are meeting old, young people who have problems, youngsters who are starting off investing. You have a whole realm of people. And I think for me, it's meeting people who become clients, looking after their portfolios. Service for me is the most important thing. And that's I have instilled in all the people who work for me. Also, I remember the members of staff and their work, and who worked for me for 20, 30, 35 years. I remember their dedication. And they were mostly women, to be honest, but there were men as well. And those people are always with you. I get messages, although I'm not any longer with the firm, my family firm that was sold. I'm PSG. Those people are still there with me. They're still sending messages. So what do I remember the most? It is being careful. Communication, dedication. I do work long hours, and I expect other people to work long hours with me. We finish every job that we have on the date. It arises. So yes, I've had wonderful moments. I've had clients come in and invested a lot of money. I've had little people come in and invest small amount of money. And it's those people that I really relish, because you want to see their money grow. You want to see them happy. You don't want to see people unhappy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, service and dedication.
Oh, very powerful. And Ina, I know that you've had many profound experiences through your career.
Yes.
And you know, the Greeks have this comment, this word, which is kairos, moments that matter, and things that have been really important to you. So what have you observed over your career? And, you know, what could people learn from you in those observations?
Oh, you know, you need dedication. You must overcome challenges. You've got to be determined. And when I started, when I took over the firm, it wasn't easy.
Yeah.
You know, I was thrown into the business, and although it was difficult, I enjoyed speaking to clients. I was very dedicated. I took pride in my work and ensured that it was accurate all the time. And that really helped me to progress. And slowly, you know, I saw many clients, looked after them, and like Hans said, it's not easy.
Yeah.
It's not easy to look after people's money.
Yeah.
You know, you worry, and if you start losing, your market comes down, you want to pull me out. You know, you say, oh my God, what am I going to do now? You know, and you pray that things turn, and when the market goes up, then you just cheer up in the office and say, yay, here we go.
Yeah.
Like I hear the boys scream when the market goes better, then they say, whoopee, and I can hear them from my office.
Yes.
Or they get very upset when it comes down. I won't repeat what they say, but I can hear from them. But it's been, it's wonderful. Things have changed. Women have got more say.
Yeah.
You know, it's different to what it was originally. I battled to become a stockbroker. I really did.
Yeah.
I was second after you.
Of course.
Yeah. It was a big battle. I mean, they wouldn't allow me in the stock exchange first because I was married community of property and I had no contractual power. So many things have happened in my life. You know, it's been such a long, interesting, but amazing journey that I've had. It has been because, you know, I had to face many difficulties, like getting divorced, I told you. So highlights in my career, you see.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I've had people working with me for many years, since the 70s, some of them. And Costa, who was my accountant, became my accountant. Eventually, he was very good to me. He taught me a lot of things.
Yeah.
He threw me in when I started at Bernstein. He said, go and sort this out. And I would say, but I don't know what it is. What do you want me to do? Go do it. When you really get stuck, come back to me and I'll tell you what to do. So, you know, it's many, many challenges, but here we are. And now I've got my son there, Francesco, which is a blessing to me because he works right alongside with me. And, you know, we just carry on. And it's been a successful business.
Absolutely.
From nothing.
And it's developed through markets ups and downs and cycles.
I've seen many. And, you know, I remember Bernstein was sick for many years, the proprietor.
Yes.
And I looked after the firm.
Yeah.
While he wasn't able to come anymore. And then he passed away and I took over. I remember you said to me, it's amazing I kept the name, and there's a reason to that.
Yes.
When I became a member, Bernstein's father, who was at the time 90, he found me and he said, Dino, you're going to change the name. And I said, so I promise you, as long as I'm alive, it's not going to happen.
Wow.
When I'm no longer here. And you know, I've had offers from other firms to take us over merge. And when I say to them, do I have to change my name? And they say, yes, no deal. And I walk out.
Wow.
I won't. No, I won't do it. No, really, I promised.
Person of your word.
Man. No, of course. Well, you know, my word is my bond at the JC. So
Exactly.
I wouldn't go back. I promised, and that was it. A few years back, not many years ago, about 5 or 6 years, I was, they wanted me to merge or bind to the firm. And I refused for that reason.
Yeah.
When he said to me, I said, "Oh, we're going to change the name." He said, "You have to." I said, "No deal, guys, goodbye." And I walked out the boardroom. I won't.
Wow.
I won't do it.
Gosh, what a story of resilience and endurance and courage. And it shows the impact that you as a woman have had on the, fingerprints
Yes.
that you've put on the industry and the business.
Yeah.
So, Anne, what do you think about how do you think about the impact that women have had on the market and on the environment?
Well, I think there's a huge impact. I think that women are showing that they're highly competent, they're needed, that they maybe communicate better. I think there are more women investors now than there were. That's when Ina and I started. I just think sometimes that women bring unique skills. They have their own perspectives, and they help businesses succeed. Some people think they can do it alone. You can't do anything alone. You need the help from everybody around you, and more than not, it's a woman who put in that extra bit to make that business succeed. They see the bigger picture.
And yet, we were chatting a while ago about the sponsors. I too have experienced many great male leaders who have sponsored and supported me. And do you want to talk a little bit about that before we move to Ina?
Well, I would say men have been incredible in my life. If I go back to my stock exchange exams, Warren Myers, who worked for the JSE, he got me through rules and regulations. George Joubert was the person who helped me with my investment paper. Brian Dowden, who was my auditor, helped me through accounts and taxation. They were all men.
Yes.
And I think I kept on appealing to men to help me rather than other women, because they dropped everything and they came to the party quickly. And as I think I said earlier on, most of my clients are men. And they take the ups and downs of the market. That's right, they know. Whereas I think sometimes women don't like to see any downward movement, and that's all your fault. Stock goes down. So losing my father too was a huge problem for me. I relied on him. He was my strength. And as Ina says, with who do you depend on when you are starting a business, you're in a crisis? That man is no longer there. So you actually contact people you think that can help you. All places are not, there will be.
Yeah. And Ina, what's been your experience of the impact that women have had on the industry and in your environment?
Incorporating women in the workplace, it enhances innovation, creativity, financial performance by having diversity of thought. It promotes also a fair and inclusive workplace, increasing the employee satisfaction and retention, and drives social change to gender equality, towards gender equality.
And it's wonderful to see that through the eras that sponsorship and support has evolved. I myself grew up in banking, and Ben Kruger, who was ultimately the group CEO, was a tremendous voice and mentor to me. And then moving to the exchange, Russell Loubser opened doors not only for me, but for Nikki, for Leanne, the Chief Operating Officer, and was a tremendous support. And then ultimately in my career, Nonkululeko Nyembezi, who was the first female chairman at the JSE, sponsored me and supported me in my journey. So it's always a mix, and it's quite extraordinary to see how many men see the importance of giving women an opportunity.
Oh yes, they pushed me. They really pushed me. And you must say, it wasn't women, it was men.
And I suppose ultimately it's our role to pay it forward.
Yes.
And so in closing, maybe I can ask each of you, what advice would you give your former self or anyone else in navigating the world today? You've come through many phases of economic development and of history in building our financial markets through very big wars, huge crises where no doubt you've learned most of what you know today. And now we're in a different era.
It's a difficult question to answer, but I think there's 2 words or 3 words. It's adapt or die.
True.
And that's what the situation is now. Things are so fast.
True.
Self-managed, all of the different investments that can, so Bitcoin, etc., etc., etc. My advice is to ground yourself. Maybe talk it out with another person, a woman, man, whoever. But ground yourself and make a slow decision and not be caught in this terribly quick situation where you've got cell phones running, this running, oh my goodness, we've got a war here, we've got a war there, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
It's terribly difficult. Right.
Yeah.
So just take a step back, ground yourself, and think it through. And then talk to somebody whose advice you really value. Because maybe they're going to see it a little differently. And always stay strong. It's so difficult sometimes if everything comes at you. And you think, oh my goodness, I shouldn't have chosen that shape. Why did I do it? And you sit there, you've got to realize your worth. And everybody has worth.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there are some comments, in fact, names of books and statements that have been made by people much smarter than me, how to live in an anti-fragile environment. So if you want to excel, you have to thrive on change and on things that are constantly changing. So you adapt or die is a very powerful and very simple representation of a very complex problem that we're all facing today. And, you know, there was a statement made by another much more clever person than me is, we live in a world of accelerations, and it's how to build yourself and keep on track in that accelerating environment. And it can be quite bewildering, especially with the technology advances. Ina, what would you...
My advice to women would be to advocate for themselves and their contributions. And they should carry on developing skills and networks.
Yeah.
They should never, they mustn't hesitate to pursue leadership positions and opportunities for advancement. You know, they must remember their skills, their unique skills and perspectives of valuable assets, which will actually help them to succeed for themselves and their organizations.
Yeah.
They must be determined, overcome challenges, and they will achieve their dream.
Well, it's a wonderful, wonderful privilege, and I think everything that you've both said is equally relevant to me, and I have no doubt relevant to everybody else. And if I look back to my formative years, I wish I'd backed myself more. I wish I had more self-confidence. Women tend to have endurance, they tend to have resilience, but they don't always back themselves. They question themselves. And I think now is the era of opportunity for growth and development, and to really create more representation of women in positions of leadership. And both of you have provided tremendous role models, and thank you for the contribution that you've made to the history of capital markets in South Africa.
Thank you.
Thank you.